Hi, and welcome to Immanuel Kids. It is good to be with you again this week. So my dog Darby came to join me because he wants to hear a story, one of my very favorite stories in the Bible. I was reading this week, and reading this story reminded me of the whole idea of keeping promises. You know, when I was a kid, sometimes my parents would say to me, "You need to go clean your room, you need to go do it right now." And I'd say, "Okay, I'll do it. I will do it." And maybe my mom or my dad would come up a little bit later and they would find out that instead of cleaning my room, I was playing. And they said, "Look, you need to clean your room." And I would say, I promise I'll clean it." And they would go away and come back later, and guess what? I didn't keep my promise. I was reminded of that yesterday because I was cleaning my room and I was putting laundry away and I was doing all those kinds of things, and I noticed a book that was on my bookshelf and it looked pretty interesting, so I took the book down, and 2 hours later I realized that I had been reading my book instead of cleaning my room. Maybe yesterday was okay because I didn't really promise anybody that I was going to clean my room, even though it was something I had to do. But you know, when I was a kid and I would do that to my parents, I was not keeping my promise. And that wasn't fair to them. It wasn't fair to me. And it made it seem like, wow, could my parents trust me to do things? So it was kind of a thing that I used to learn from. And my parents helped me learn that too, that when you make a promise, you keep that promise. So if you promise to do something for someone, to help someone with something, to even just to pray for them or to talk to them or to think about them, those promises are pretty important to keep. Even though it's easy to get distracted, and there are times when probably all of us will not keep our promises. You know, the thing about that is, even when we don't, God still loves us. God still forgives us. God still will be with us. God still will take care of us. All of this reminded me this week of a story in the Bible. It's in the book of Genesis, and it's a story about Abraham and his wife Sarah. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, and they had no children, and that really made them feel pretty sad. There was nothing they wanted more than to have children. But they figured it probably wouldn't happen to them. They probably wouldn't have children. But one day, God came to Abraham and said, "You know what? Follow me. Trust me. I will show you a place where I will take you. I will lead you there. And what's more, I'm going to give you a child." Well, Abraham trusted and believed. And he promised that he would follow God and he would do what God asked him to do. And so Abraham and Sarah, when they were really old, they left their home, they left everything that was familiar, and they followed God. Now, they followed for a long time, and it looked like God was not going to keep that promise because time kept going and they still didn't have children. And there were times that Abraham and Sarah felt, well, maybe God's not going to keep that promise. And there were times that even Abraham and Sarah didn't keep their promises. They didn't stay faithful to God. They didn't trust God. But you know what? Through it all, God always kept that promise. Even when Abraham and Sarah did things that they shouldn't have done. God still loved them. God still cared for them. God still took care of them. God still led them. And guess what? God still gave them a child. And it was wonderful. They were so happy. They were so thrilled because they learned that even when they didn't keep promises, God always kept promises. I think that's an important thing for us. We always want to do everything we can to keep our promises to people because promises are pretty important. People need us. People need us to take care of them and to help them. And so we should do everything we can to keep those promises. But even those times when we mess up, it doesn't mean that God's not going to love us. God will forgive us. And God will still take care of us and lead us, just like he did with Abraham and Sarah. If you have a story Bible at home, you should look up the story of Abraham and Sarah. It's a wonderful, wonderful story about God being faithful, about God taking care of the people he loved. It's a wonderful story about God leading us. And it's a story about God keeping promises. God's going to keep those promises to us, that God will always be with us, that God will never leave us alone, and that God will always, always, always love us. Well, it was good being with you today, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. But today, let's end by saying a prayer together, shall we? God, we thank you because you always keep your promises to us. And because of that, you teach us that we can trust you all the time. Help us to see your love. Help us to feel your love. And help us to follow you. But also help us to help those around us, to serve those, to keep our promises that we make. Lead us and take care of us. Amen. Well, it was good seeing you and good sharing the story of Abraham and Sarah with you. One of my very favorites in the Bible. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care and God bless.